What if the strip club you partied at last weekend was secretly a front for one of Australia's most dangerous outlaw motorcycle gangs? What if behind the flashing lights, pounding music and dancers, drugs, guns, and millions in dirty cash were being moved? And what happens when you're part of a 1% club, wearing their logo tattooed on your skin, but you betray them or get expelled? Do they let you walk away with those symbols, or do they make you pay a painful price? Section 1. Who are the Bikies? Let's start with the basics. Who are these Bikies? Outlaw motorcycle gangs, OMCGs, are a global presence, but Australia is home to some of the most notorious. The Hells Angels, Comancheros, Rebels, Bandidos, and Mongols lead the list, each with thousands of members spread across hundreds of chapters. These aren't just motorcycle enthusiasts. They're considered by Australian law enforcement as organized crime groups, involved in drug trafficking, extortion, firearms, smuggling, and more. The term Bikie is Australian, often used to describe members of these 1% clubs, so named because they represent the 1% of riders who reject society's rules. According to the Australian Federal Police and specialized units like the NSW Raptor Squad, these gangs are behind a large portion of the nation's drug trade, particularly involving methamphetamine, cocaine, and MDMA, worth billions of dollars. But their crimes don't stop at drugs. These groups also traffic illegal firearms, run protection rackets, and launder money through legitimate-looking businesses, including strip clubs. Now, here's where things get intense. Loyalty in a 1% club isn't optional. That club tattoo, whether it's the gang's emblem or a 1% diamond, is a lifelong commitment. If you're kicked out or betray the group, they don't just take back your vest. They come for your ink. And it won't be with a gentle laser removal. Before we dig deeper into strip clubs, let's understand the stakes. In the bikie world, tattoos aren't just personal, they're public declarations of allegiance. Getting expelled for breaking rules or being disloyal can lead to forced removal of those tattoos. Sometimes it's done at a tattoo shop with blackout ink. In more brutal cases, it's done with heated metal objects or other painful methods. Section 2. Why strip clubs? So why do outlaw Bikie gangs use strip clubs instead of, say, a car wash or a bar? Because strip clubs are ideal for money laundering. These venues generate huge amounts of cash with little oversight. Patrons pay for drinks, private dances, and VIP access, often in cash. Thousands of dollars can move through a single night without a clear paper trail. That makes it the perfect front for dirty money from drug deals and gun sales. Here's how it works. Bikies generate millions through illegal operations like meth and gun trafficking, but they can't deposit that money directly into a bank without drawing attention. Instead, they route it through a strip club, which reports the income as legal revenue. For example, the club might report $50,000 in champagne sales over a week, when in reality most of that money came from drug transactions. Once it's processed, the money appears clean. It can be used to buy luxury cars, designer clothes, watches, or even to fund lavish parties, with rumors of even designer-branded drugs like Dior-stamped cocaine. Strip clubs also align with bikie culture. They're loud, chaotic, and frequented by people who don't ask many questions. Perfect cover for criminal activities. VIP rooms become drug-dealing zones. Guns get stashed in offices. And the dark, noisy environment makes it easy to do business unnoticed. Some Bikie gangs don't just use these venues, they take them over. They may extort club owners, force them to pay for protection, or even run the businesses themselves. In certain cases, Bikies have recruited dancers and security staff to help distribute drugs, turning the entire club into part of a criminal network. Section 3. Real raids and busts. Let's talk about what happens when law enforcement gets involved. In 2021, one of the largest crackdowns occurred in Sydney and Wollongong. Police raided multiple properties connected to the Comancheros and rebels. What they found was like a scene from a crime thriller. 12.5 kilograms of drugs, including designer-branded cocaine, $1.2 million in cash. Luxury items like Rolex watches, Louis Vuitton sunglasses, and a stash of firearms. 6 men were arrested, one dragged out wearing Gucci slides, another in just his underwear. It was a textbook Bikie operation with luxury items bought through criminal profits and a strip club operating as the main laundering hub. But this wasn't the only case. In 2024, police in Western Australia raided properties linked to the rebels in Perth's north. They discovered $400,000 in cash hidden inside an arcade machine along with drugs and weapons. This operation was also tied to a strip club, where Bikies were allegedly running extortion schemes and drug sales. One former Rebels member was even convicted of holding up a Perth brothel with a shotgun, illustrating how deeply involved these gangs are in adult entertainment businesses. And this issue isn't limited to Australia. In 2025, a raid in Colorado Springs, USA, targeted an underground nightclub suspected to be linked to an outlaw motorcycle gang. Authorities uncovered drugs, firearms, and even active-duty military personnel working security. Over 100 people were detained. The DEA described it as a center for drug trafficking, prostitution, and violent crime. These cases show that strip clubs are more than just distractions or night-out destinations. They're often key operational bases for outlaw biker gangs. Section 4. The high stakes of Bikie tattoos. Joining a 1% club is a lifelong oath, and one you wear on your skin. Whether it's the Hells Angels' Death's Head, the Rebels' Skull, or the Comancheros' Condor, these tattoos are earned, not given. But they also come with risk. If you leave the club under bad terms, whether for breaking rules, disloyalty, or cooperating with police, the club doesn't just take your patch. They demand those tattoos be removed. And it's rarely voluntary. Some former members have been forced to undergo painful procedures. In milder cases, tattoos are blacked out with new ink. In others, they've been burned off with hot tools. It's a message. Betrayal has consequences, and no one walks away wearing the club's colors. Conclusion: the world of outlaw Bikie gangs is not just about motorcycles or brotherhood. It's a high-stakes underworld where strip clubs become financial hubs, tattoos become binding contracts, and disloyalty can cost you everything, including your skin. Whether in Australia, the United States, or anywhere else, these criminal organizations use violence, money, and fear to operate in plain sight, often just behind the red neon lights. Ever heard of a hot spoon? It's a heated piece of metal used to burn off tattoos, leaving behind scarred, blistered skin. Former biker Pee Wee Goldsmith once shared a story about a man in prison who faked Hells Angels tattoos. When the truth surfaced, he was punished with a hot spoon. The aftermath was brutal. There are many stories of former Bikies who thought they could cover up their tattoos later, only to be found by their former brothers. One man let several months pass without removing his club ink, thinking he was in the clear. When club members found him, they didn't simply black out the tattoos. They beat him nearly to death. Some clubs, like the Hells Angels, require members to prove their loyalty for years, sometimes up to 5, before they're allowed to wear the club's emblem in ink. Why? Because loyalties can shift quickly. One day you're proudly wearing a full back patch. The next day you're out, and that ink makes you a target. And it's not just about real members. People who wear club tattoos without actually belonging, so-called posers, risk serious consequences. In Pee Wee's story, the man with fake Hells Angels ink was fortunate to walk away with only burns. Others haven't been so lucky. Some have been assaulted, or worse, for flaunting 1% tattoos they didn't earn. As one former biker put it, "You better be married to the club, because when you divorce, they take everything, just like a bad ex-wife." Section 5. Staying under the radar. Outlaw motorcycle gangs are experts at operating beneath the surface. Strip clubs provide ideal cover. They're busy, cash-driven, and rarely draw heavy scrutiny from authorities. Loud music, low lighting, and a steady flow of patrons make them perfect venues for hidden transactions. And often, Bikies don't run the clubs themselves. They use trusted associates, low-level members, or even non-members to manage daily operations and keep their names off the paperwork. These gangs are also structured in a way that protects the larger organization. Chapters across Australia and around the world operate semi-independently, which makes it difficult for police to take down an entire network. In strip clubs, Bikies blend in, whether as owners, bouncers, or regulars, concealing their criminal activity behind the club's regular operations. But law enforcement is adapting. In 2023, a multi-agency operation in Australia resulted in the arrest of over 150 Bikies. Authorities seized 80 firearms and tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition. Strip clubs and similar businesses were central targets. In another case, the NSW's Raptor Squad raided a Nomads clubhouse in Sydney and uncovered large amounts of cash, drugs, and an illegal bar set up inside a warehouse. These raids confirm that strip clubs are not just places of entertainment. They're command centers for Bikie crime. And back to tattoos. Some members rush to get inked the moment they're patched in. A 1% diamond, a club logo, or even crude tattoos featuring the gang's name are common. But as one ex-member warned, "I never got the club's name inked because I've seen how fast things change." Thinking about a full-back club piece? Think again. 3 months of hanging around isn't enough. This lifestyle demands absolute commitment. That tattoo isn't just art, it's a contract. One that's almost impossible to break. Section 6. The dark side of strip clubs. Strip clubs are more than just lucrative money laundering operations. They're tools of control and intimidation. Bikies use these venues to dominate rivals, shake down owners for protection payments, and impose their rules through violence. In some cases, bouncers have been recruited to distribute drugs, and dancers have acted as couriers, turning the entire club into a criminal ecosystem where loyalty is enforced by fear. Consider the case of a Rebels member in Perth who was convicted for storming a brothel with a shotgun. It wasn't just a robbery, it was a warning: cooperate or face the consequences. In Sydney, certain strip clubs have been caught up in protection rackets, where Bikie gangs demand weekly payments to protect the businesses from rival gangs or even from themselves. Sometimes strip clubs serve as punishment grounds. Imagine being dragged into a back room, held down, and having your gang tattoo forcibly blacked out while music blares outside. Or worse, having it burned off with a hot spoon. In the outlaw biker world, tattoos are sacred symbols of loyalty. But once you're out, they become proof of betrayal. Strip clubs have also been targeted in acts of arson when owners refuse to comply. In Melbourne, a gym linked to the Mongols was deliberately set on fire, believed to be part of a turf war over strip clubs and other businesses. These venues are more than nightlife. They're battlegrounds for power. Section 7. Law enforcement fights back. Law enforcement is stepping up its efforts against outlaw motorcycle gangs. In Australia, specialised units like the New South Wales Raptor Squad and Western Australia's Gang Crime Squad are on the front lines. Using surveillance, wiretaps, confidential informants, and coordinated raids, They are targeting not just clubhouses, but also strip clubs and other businesses used as criminal fronts. In 2025, a raid on a Bandidos clubhouse in Willetton, Perth, resulted in the seizure of drugs and gang-related paraphernalia. In 2024, 2 Bikie presidents were arrested in Western Australia, with authorities linking them to money laundering operations that included strip clubs. A broader crackdown in 2023 saw over 150 arrests in a single week. The message is clear. Bikies are not above the law. Still, these gangs are resilient. They adapt quickly, recruiting new members with skills in cybercrime or financial fraud to stay ahead. Strip clubs remain integral to their strategies, blending into the nightlife while concealing millions in illicit profits. For patched members, loyalty is not just expected, it's enforced. Tattoos become permanent proof of allegiance, and breaking that oath can come at a high price. If you're thinking about joining a 1% club, take this advice seriously. Don't rush into getting that tattoo. Spend time with the club. Understand the lifestyle. Because once that ink is on your skin, it's more than a design. It's a commitment that can cost you everything. Section 8. The cultural impact. Outlaw motorcycle gangs are more than just criminal enterprises. They've become a cultural symbol. From films to television and the iconic biker look, they've shaped the image of the rebellious outsider. Strip clubs, with their neon lights and gritty atmosphere, are central to that mythos, combining danger, rebellion, and power. But the real story isn't glamorous. Bikie-linked strip clubs often serve as epicenters for drugs, firearms, extortion, and violence. Their influence spans continents from Australia to North America, with gangs like the Hells Angels and Bandidos using the same strategies across borders. Strip clubs offer the perfect cover, public-facing businesses steeped in counterculture. Behind the scenes, however, they're being used to move product, launder money, and enforce brutal codes of loyalty. The raids, arrests, and prosecutions tell a sobering story. Biker gangs have transformed parts of the adult entertainment industry into criminal empires. These tattoos aren't just fashion, they're binding pledges, and breaking that pledge can have brutal consequences. If you're interested in learning more about outlaw motorcycle gangs, the hidden world of strip clubs, or organized crime culture, explore our playlist on criminal underworlds. Stay safe. And remember, in this world, nothing is ever just for show.